Welcome to your weekly reminder that only dead fish go with the flow. This week we have a special guest, two-time silver medalist at the Commonwealth Birmingham 2022 Games. We have Bella Hindley. So finish your career swimming for Yale and doing university and then move back over to the UK, part of British swimming, went to the Birmingham 22 Commonwealth Games. Could you name and explain your sport to us, Bella?
Of course. Thank you so much for having me on. So yeah, I was a swimmer. I literally swam since I was, 11 years old. And so the events that I did in particular were sprint freestyle. So I did the 50-meter freestyle and then the 100-meter freestyle. So yeah, the medals that you mentioned at the Commonwealth Games, they were in the 100-meter freestyle relays. So that's with three other teammates. But yeah, that's swimming.
What does your training schedule look like for swimming? Because when I get in the pool, it's like yummy mummy goes out for a coffee morning and does a bit of doggy paddle.
Yeah, unfortunately, not so much like that. Well, it kind of does look like that now for me. But back when I was swimming, I mean, it varied throughout my career, but usually it was probably like 8 or 9 sessions a week. Sometimes 10 if we were on like big training camps. We usually would always have Sundays off, so it was always a recovery day. So it would be those swim sessions and then usually 3 or 4 gym sessions a week. And one of those might be like a circuit or something like that. So yeah, pretty intensive. You know, it's similar to rowing. You've got the early mornings and the doubles. So you're training in the morning, training in the evening. So yeah, pretty intense. Definitely doesn't look like that anymore. So yeah, I say retired, but I stopped swimming just over a year ago now. So that's more what my swimming looks like now, as the yummy mummy in the pool, not doing very much.
Yeah, I kind of swim a bit like a brick. So that's the thing when you're doing rowing, because you're in the boat, you don't have to worry too much about swimming. And then if you fall
Mm.
in, you're supposed to stay with the flotation device and not just sort of flail around. But yeah,
Yeah.
swimming, unlike rowing, is not limited by when the sun comes up because you're indoors. So I think you
Mm.
guys have a lot more sort of early mornings and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely didn't love that. A lot of more early mornings. Like when I was in secondary school, every Monday morning I was up at like 4:15, which would not recommend. Even yeah, when you're like taking like GCSEs, A levels, was not always nice to be up that early. Grew up in London. Trying to swim in London was not easy because there aren't that many pools. And so you had to kind of go wherever there was space, wherever you got pool time. So sometimes that was like literally driving across London to get to a pool. So yeah, I was very lucky that most of the or one of the pools that I swam at was very near where I went to school, so that made it a lot easier. But yeah, some of the early mornings were in Crystal Palace, which I don't know if many people know where that is, but yeah, that was like sometimes like an hour drive away, which then having to get to school by like 8:30 in the morning, you had to be up early. So yeah, did not love that. I don't miss that part of swimming.
It was probably easier getting there early in the morning than at like
Mm.
7:30 or 8 o'clock when you're just about to hit rush hour. This is like a really silly question, but I always had like a hair wash schedule, if you like, with my training. And so I would kind of, because you can't, okay, for me personally, I can't wash my hair every day. It's just too much effort. But if you're going in the pool and you're constantly getting in the chlorine and,
Yeah.
it's, is there a hair wash schedule? Like, this is a stupid question. That would be part of my training regime, is factoring that in.
No, this is a very good question. And it's something that I feel like is probably the most common, or like up there with one of the most common questions I ever got asked. I honestly had to wash my hair like multiple times a day. Because like, if I was training in the morning, I couldn't just leave it with the chlorine in because it would get so dry and gross. So I'd have to wash it after that. And then also like I was at school and like I didn't, you want your hair to look okay. And then I'd have training in the evening, and then usually I'd want to wash it again before I went to bed. So sometimes it'd be twice a day. Sometimes I would get away with just like rinsing out the chlorine and not having to wash it. But most of the time you want to wash the chlorine off anyway. And my hair now, like I can't really go more than a day without washing it. So just I think that's gonna have to be the way it is now, unfortunately.
You're
But
stuck with
yeah.
it for life.
I'm stuck with it now. But yeah, no, it was definitely annoying. Yeah, I will say that's one annoying thing about swimming is there is so much like faffing and all of that. Whereas like with some sports like running, like you can, door to door and you don't have to but obviously you probably should shower afterwards, but like you don't have to. Whereas swimming, you really do.
So, on the topic of housekeeping, so we've just talked about hair, periods, and swimming. Sounds like an absolute nightmare combination. I know when I was rowing, like it was a bit inconvenient, but I wasn't physically getting into the water. I was just having to sort of plan around it. Talk me through that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's stressful, right? Like you have to go straight into like using tampons straight away and navigating all of that while like it's not like you cannot train for a few days because you're like figuring out how to like use one or anything. So I think that can be really stressful, and I remember for me it was as well at the time. But yeah, I think for people that are struggling with that, I think there are people that you can talk to, and there are resources, and it's okay if you need to like take a day or two to like adjust and figure out what works for you, and like yeah, what tampon you need and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think with swimming, because yeah, you are like fully submerged in the water, you can't just get away with like using a pad one day or you're using something else. So I mean, there are other options as well, and I think they're actually trying to come out with like a period proof swimsuit. I don't know
Ooh.
how far in the works that is, but I was doing some research on it, and I think there's definitely one for. I know there's one for like a competition somewhere in the sense that like proper good like training somewhere. But I think there's definitely room there for some sort of some improvement, because it is really tricky, like navigating. It's a big change, to begin with, and then you're having to go straight into using something that you're like quite unfamiliar with.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I
Because
definitely yeah.
swimming, you all sort of get into it very early. So you'd maybe start swimming before any of that has sort of started. And then suddenly
Mm.
you're like, oh, this is extra life admin that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, yeah. No, because I think because of the training, like I didn't start until quite late, which so then I literally have been swimming since the age of like 11, so a good few years before I had to like deal with that, and it's just like adjusting to that sort of new normal, like knowing and like having to know your body in a different way, in the sense of like how it responds to training when you are on your period. And actually sometimes I would train better when I was, but like some people obviously don't, like some people get really awful cramps, and that's also really tricky. Like you're trying to train and perform, and every training session, like you're looking for those things to improve on, and having that be something else you have to deal with can really add, throw a spanner in the works there. So, and I think everyone has a completely different experience.
Mm.
I had some people who had to go on contraception from a really young age because they had awful cramps and could barely stand. So yeah, everyone has a very varied experience, and I was lucky that mine wasn't too bad. But again, you do have to adjust to like using tampons from the get-go, and yeah, like really knowing your body and knowing what you can do at certain times of the month, like pretty early on, in a particular phase, like you might not train very well, and knowing that and adjusting to that is can be really important. That's something that I think I learned more about when I was like later on. I wasn't like a 17-year-old girl being like, I'm in my luteal phase, like I'm not going to train well this next few days. But like I think later on, when I was like really trying to like pin down like the peak of my performance, it was definitely something that I was very much aware of. I think also like when you're doing like the days you're going to be competing, like knowing what date that's on. Like I actually was on my period at Olympic trials, which not ideal, but I actually sometimes performed better when I was on my period. So that ended up being, at times a good thing. But yeah, I think just yeah, you plan for all of those things as well, in the same way that you're planning. Obviously, we've got that additional planning that boys don't have to think about, but you're tapering, you're resting, you're getting the new swimming racing suit. We wouldn't like shave our bodies until like shave our legs. So I said bodies. We wouldn't shave our legs until a big competition. And so like even that was it, because that was an additional performance benefit. So you're doing all of these little things for your like peak performance. And so like planning around like your period as well was a part of that.
So would you not shave your legs until the competition because it's like extra drag, or were you like going for extra smoothness?
It was like extra smoothness I
Okay.
mean, obviously you could shave like whenever, but like it was like they didn't really control it that much. But like we would like I would like shave we would shave our arms. some of the boys would like shave their backs and stuff. Obviously, like they shave their chests. Obviously, like girls wouldn't have to do that. But it's really interesting because like you actually, or like the if you do it, like obviously when you shave your legs, you like then when you get in the pool, you feel like a seal. Like you feel so like quick and
Wow.
smooth. And I think not only was it like, yes, there's you've like shaved off a layer of dead skin, like you're a little bit faster, but there's also the psychological impact of like feeling really quick in the water.
Mm.
Um, but
That's
yeah,
like that's like a completely different level of like look good, race good.
yeah,
It's like actually is beneficial.
yeah. Well, it genuinely it is that you are slightly more like dynamic through the water.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, some people obviously did shave whenever, but for a lot of swimmers, we probably wouldn't.
That's
Yeah.
really interesting. I would definitely have to like I'm terrible when I'm shaving my legs. I always like forget to do my ankles and I've got a few stubborn hairs on my big toe as well. So it's just I definitely would have to put like a note on my phone to make sure to remember to do all of that because I'm such a haphazard like when it comes to shaving my legs. Could
Fair.
you sort of tell me a little bit about what you would consider the best part of the sport and the worst part of the sport?
Oof, okay, I'll definitely start with the best. I think, and this is with most sports, I don't think this is necessarily specific to swimming, but one thing I loved was like just being able to like push my body to its limit. Like, and you're in the middle of a session, you're like, you truly don't know if you're gonna make it through. You're like, oh God, I've got like 5 rounds of this, and like round one has completely like thrown me. And it was so tough. And I think like realizing what your body's truly capable of, I think was always just like a really cool and like satisfying feeling and definitely like one of the biggest things I miss. I also really miss like the camaraderie that came with that. Like when you're in the middle of a hard session, you've got like, you've got your friends around, you've got your teammates there like pushing you forward and like really getting behind each other. Like I really miss that feeling because I think there's something so special about that. And I think, there's always that saying that like you bond in the trenches. And I think with sport, especially, I mean, especially swimming, but I really think all sports, I think that there's so much truth to that. So my teammates are still to this day and will forever be some of my closest friends because like we've been through some tough stuff together. Um, so that, and then I think going to swim meets and when it goes well, obviously those are the best. Those are great parts. When you're able to celebrate those wins, celebrate those years of hard work, years of training. For that, for a win, for a time, for making a team, whatever it might be, like obviously that makes it so worth it. It's so satisfying. And I always loved being on relays for that purpose because I think it really amplifies that when you're able to straight away like celebrate with your teammates and you're all doing it for each other. So yeah, I mean I also like loved the feeling of swimming. Like I loved being in the water. I loved being able to like perfect that craft in the sense that all of your body is touching the water. So you've got so many different aspects that you can change. Whether it's like not only just like your head position, your hip position, your feet, your kick, like all these different aspects. And I thought I loved that aspect of being quite clinical about it in some senses, like looking at every part of your body and how you can maximize it. So I thought, so yeah, so I mean, I could go on. There are so many best parts. I think one of the worst parts is we've already mentioned the early mornings. Not always fun. Yeah, waking up early it doesn't get any easier. I feel like people always said that to me. They were like, oh, surely you're used to it, but you just never do. Even now, like now I have to wake up like 7 a.m. and I'm like, oh gosh. And then I think another one of the worst parts about swimming, and again, this is probably with most sports, like it's not unique to swimming, but you would go like years and years of hard work and doing everything perfectly, like not missing out on those parties, like not drinking, going to bed early, like eating right, fueling your body correctly, like drinking enough water, like all these different aspects, perfecting every part of it to maybe not go at best time. So like in swimming, and I think this is actually where it might be slightly different to other sports. We only had usually like one, maybe two meets, like competitions a year where we would like fully taper and rest and want to go at best time. So in a lot of sports that you could, like in diving, you could do your best dive in training. Whereas us that you needed to like rest your body, like and taper is like coming as I'm sure you know, but like easing up on the intensity, dropping the volume down a little bit. I would usually taper for about 2 weeks for a big competition. And like I would never be able to go best time. if I wasn't untapered. Like we usually would have like untapered best times and tapered best times. So like in season versus like a proper best time. That like obviously amplified the stress and the pressure that was on those two competitions a year. And that part I found really difficult. And it'd be frustrating when like training would be going really well and like, everything was going right. And then you would get to a competition and it just you wouldn't go best time. And sometimes there was no explanation for it. It might have been mentally, you weren't in the right headspace or something like that. And, so there's just, so much pressure on those really isolated moments. And I found that was really quite one of the worst parts about it. Like, for example, in one of my races, like I didn't go a best time for like 8 years, which looking back, like is nuts. But like that's not uncommon. And so it wasn't one of my best events, but I did still race it pretty frequently. So yeah, so I think that was one of the worst, the worst parts. But I think it keeps you like wanting more, right? Like it makes those, when you do go best time, it makes it so much more worth it. And this is what I tell a lot of like young, up and comers in the sport, is that like celebrate those wins now, like celebrate those best times when you go them. Cause I was like, when you get a bit older, like they don't always come around often. So like you'll want to go back and appreciate those moments. Like even now, like I'm retired and I'm like, I wish I appreciated it more when I did go best time. Cause like, yeah, they don't happen a lot. And like you're training hard for that. So you've got to celebrate it if it does happen. But yeah, so that's, I think that was a very long-winded answer, but I think, yeah, those are my best and worst moments.
100% I agree with the celebrating the highs. I think I don't think I went 8 years, but I think maybe did 3 or 4 years without a personal best on like the 2K or whatever it was. And it took me ages to sort of get over that one hill or that one marker. And then when I finally did, it was really funny because I did it. And then like with rowing, like going sub 7 is like a big thing on a 2K. And I finally did it. And I put the handle down and I said to my coach, I was like, I'm never doing that again, like jokingly. And I never did a 2K after that. That was, I then, ended up retiring. But at that moment, I was like, oh, I'm never doing that again. And then it turned out that was the last time. And, it's funny how the world works, I guess, or fate, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
On our worsts, do you have a swimming sporting ick?
This is really good. I was really thinking long and hard about this because I think it's really hard to separate this from like what's an ick for like a person. Like, so I was like, oh, I hate it when like, I don't know, like people don't know how to like put on a swim cap. I was like, yeah, but that's not a very, very good one. I was going to say that early mornings are a bit of an ick because like no one really loved those.
Yeah.
But this is more of a commentary on swimming. When people would say like, if you have a good first race, some people would be like, oh, like they're on form, or like, oh, they're like in shape, like they're, you know what I mean? And I really found that mindset so toxic because like that puts even more pressure on like your first race. And then also sometimes you would then read into so much of like what you were doing, and like you could have a bad first race and still swim well for the rest of the meet. And I felt it took like a lot of time like talking with a sports psychologist about this, is like not overthinking like every single race that you do, because it doesn't necessarily have an impact on your other races. So, and like some meets are sometimes like 7-8 days long, and you've got heats, semis, finals, like you've got a lot of races, and like your first race doesn't necessarily mean that much. Like it's usually just like your first, you might have not fully hit your taper yet, or there are so many other factors. And I think that was always such an ick for me when people are like, oh, like he's on form or she's on form, all this stuff. And I was like, what does that means nothing. So that would definitely be one of my icks. I think more of like a surface level one would be like, oh, when your like goggles would come off, or like just think, or like fog up, which is, it seems so silly. And like, obviously you train so much to like know that that's not going to happen. But sometimes like it just does. I don't know if you watched in Tokyo, there's like a American swimmer. She was in, I think like the relay, or might even be her final. Her like goggles came off. I think she still managed to like win the gold medal or something. But like, it's just that's just so frustrating when things like that would happen. Or like when your suit would rip. So I don't know if you know much about like the swimming racing suits. Like, so you get your racing suit way smaller than like your normal suit size. Like they're so tight. Like, I guess this isn't it too. The racing suits, they would take like sometimes like 20 minutes to get on. and it's like stressful, right? Like you've got your race, like you timed it out perfectly. Like, you've given yourself time, but you're still there, like sweating or like stressed trying to get this like suit on. And then sometimes you would get it on and like, again, it's like this really thin material. Sometimes you just rip it. Or like if you have a nail and it like goes straight through it. So I guess that would be an ick. And they're also like 300, 400 pounds. So you're like, great. 300, 400 pounds down the drain. And now I have to go find another one. And I'm racing in like 20 minutes. So I guess that would be an ick as
Oh,
well.
there is
Yeah.
nothing worse than getting stuck in an item of clothing when you have to be somewhere. Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter if it's a race or if it's like going for dinner or you're late for work. If you get stuck in an item of clothing, that's it. Like, your stress levels and the sweat is just going to go
Oh
through
my
the
God, it's
roof.
horrible, horrible. And they're also just, they're so, like, I can't describe how tight they are. Like, one of some racing suits that I literally would try to get like the leg through and it would like barely get over my calf. I'd be like, great. Like, it was just like so stressful, but it was kind of good in a sense because sometimes it really raised your heart rate and then you were like, had so much adrenaline, you were like ready to go. So I think like it could sometimes be beneficial, but yeah, that was such an ick. It was so annoying.
The swimmers
Um,
are like, you can keep your med ball slams, like the hormonal priming when everyone's like gets the
yeah,
med balls and it's like slams them first thing in the morning. Yeah, I've got to put my swimsuit on, and that is gonna raise the roof of these stress levels.
yeah. They were also so uncomfortable. Like they're like pulling on your shoulders so hard. Which again, like it like obviously you want it to be really tight and like, but hydrodynamic, like all that stuff, I get that, but like, oh, so they were so uncomfortable. So yeah, I guess that would be the swimsuits would be an ick for me.
I think the swimsuits are a good lead on because I was gonna sort of ask you very briefly a topical question. The enhanced games, and I think swimsuits are kind of featuring in that as well as maybe
Mm,
not so encouraged substances.
yeah. Okay, so it's such an interesting topic. I think the swimsuits aspect, I think they got banned in 2008. They were sort of this like they had like a wetsuit material in them, which like artificially in a sense made you higher in the water, and that obviously, the higher you are in the water the faster you go, so they do have that performance benefit like instantly. And I sort of, when I started my career, I was like just on the tail end of those, so I didn't actually ever get to use them, which I was quite upset about. But it took us quite a while to get through to break all of those world records that we had from the super suits, but I think they're all gone now.
Okay.
So that's an interesting aspect. I think in general the enhanced games, oh, I'm really split minded about it because I think one side of me being like the swimming kind of intrigue and like I guess nerdy aspect of it is like how cool would it be to see like what is the true limit of like swimming performance, like all these barriers that like we know with world records and all this stuff. It's like, oh, could a swimmer, could a female swimmer, could a male swimmer ever break these specific time barriers? Like what's the limit of with the enhanced games? Like I don't know. And I think that's really exciting because I think obviously that the sport getting faster, that's always an exciting and cool thing.
Mm,
So I think from that side of things I'm like fascinated to see what happens. I think it's also interesting because you're not, it's not like all of the top swimmers in the world are going to join the enhanced games, so I think that's going to be also an interesting one because like you're not necessarily, like there are some very good swimmers that have joined the enhanced games, but I don't know who else will. So I think that would be an interesting aspect of it as well, to see like this person who, has a few world championship medals but hasn't won Olympic games. Like, are they going to be what's the limit of their potential there? But I think the more like logical side of things is like we don't know the impact of taking those drugs, like the long term impact of taking all those drugs, steroids, whatever it might be. We don't know the impact of that will have on someone, and I think that's pretty scary and uncertain. I also think having years of being drug tested and having to monitor so much of like anything you put in your body, like even like creams, sometimes you had to be so careful of. I think I can't imagine just completely going the other way, and I think just like the mental side of that I think would be really really challenging. So I'm very like split about it. I think everyone deserves their own opinion, and if people, I think the money side of things in it is incredible.
mm.
I do think it makes it enticing. I'm not sure necessarily for the right reasons for specific people, but I think having athletes be rewarded financially is never a bad thing, but I do think it's complex, lots of different aspects there.
It is.
But yeah,
I was gonna ask because it seems they've almost sort of started with swimming.
yeah.
Do you have an insight into why it sort of started with swimming, or do you think they were just like it's easy to control the conditions of a pool as such? Like
Mm,
there's no wind or anything to do with that, or whether or not they're just like eeny, meeny, miny, mo, swimming, we're gonna start with you.
yeah, that's a really good point because I'm thinking like running probably a similar thing of like, I mean, yes, you've got like things like wind, but like in the stadium, probably not. And so I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not honestly sure why they started with swimming. I think it might be have something to do with like the racing suits that we used to use.
Mm,
And because I know there have been some swimmers, or like there have been some like coaches and things that have promoted. I think it was Caleb Dressel was trying to break. I think it was 20 seconds in a 50 freestyle with a super suit. So he's like one of the best swimmers in the US. He's not hasn't joined the enhanced games, but he was like trying on one of the like super suits to like break a specific time barrier just to see if it was like possible. So I think it could have like maybe led from that. But that's a really good question. I think in all sports there are issues with doping scandals.
mm.
I don't know if there's swimming more than most. I would hope not, but I don't know.
I don't know. The
Um,
one that springs to mind is definitely cycling.
exactly. Yeah. I think it'll be interesting. Yeah, I honestly don't know too much about it.
I was just gonna say quickly because you're saying that you're
Mm.
intrigued by it. It's because
Yes.
you are doing medical school as well. So I imagine like the
Yes.
medic within you is like, I wonder.
Yeah, and I think like, with so my last 2 years of my career, I was at the National Centre, and they, like put so much time and effort into all the different aspects of performance, whether it's so like the racing suits, and then obviously we had nutritionists, we had psychologists, we had strength and conditioning, we had all these different things. I think a big part of the nutrition side was, we were started on things like creatine, on beta alanine, which again, all legal. But that part even was really fascinating to see. Like, even I remember when I started like taking creatine for the first time, and seeing how like my body reacted to that, and seeing the way that my performance changed as well. And it's like even when you start like fueling properly and like having a protein shake, you're suddenly like, oh wait, like I'm not as tired. And so I think like even just those little tweaks, again, within the realms of like what is legal within the governing body of swimming and of sport, but that was still really interesting to see that. So I'm like curious as to like what is the true like limit of like the human body's potential in the water. But I think so I'm intrigued by that, but then I'm also like it fills me with a lot of like concern of like what that might do to your body.
As an umbrella,
Yeah.
it is interesting. I know it sort of piques everyone's interest, and then they're oh
Mm,
no, 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 that's bad. But you're like,
mm.
but I'm gonna watch anyway.
Yeah, it's like that thing that you're like, I probably should look away, but like I'm also just quite curious.
Yeah,
But no, the thing that scares me is like the health impact, is the main one, which I think everyone sort of agrees with.
yeah. It is all fascinating. We'll move
Mm,
on to our dying on the hill for this week. So, and we sort of discussed before we came on the call how we sort of phrase it, and I think
mm.
you sort of came up with an umbrella
Yeah, so I think the hill that I want to die on was just talking about sort of an umbrella term of like supporting athletes post and also pre, during, and post retirement. And I think we were both speaking about like our sort of experiences with retiring from sport, and I think not enough time and effort and energy is necessarily spent on like life after sports. And there's a lot of talk about like post Olympics. Like I unfortunately wasn't able, like I wasn't fast enough to go to the Olympics, but you go from like your peak performance, like you're peaked in your sport, and that was your whole identity, and then you come home and it's sort of back to daily life, and you're just like going to the shop and living your normal life. And so in the same way, like I went from being in Olympic trials, literally on a Sunday night was my final race. I unfortunately didn't make the team for lots of different reasons, but woke up that Monday morning, and suddenly I had like nothing to do. And, the day before, my entire day had been planned out. Well, years leading up to that, every aspect of my life had been controlled, had been timed, had been measured, had been perfected for that one moment, and it didn't work out. And then I woke up the next day and I was suddenly like, so what now? And again, and as someone who I knew I was starting medical school in a few months, like I knew I had something huge to go on to and a big career to look forward to, and I was really excited about that. But I think like managing the impact that can have on your mental health, going from your entire identity, and every like waking moment is to do with this one event that you have coming up, and then you wake up the next day and that's gone. And not only are you processing like this big disappointment, but you're also processing this like complete loss of identity, this complete like loss of like self in a way. I
Mm.
was like, well, I don't have to swim. I don't have to eat. And not that I ate super strict, but like I don't have to eat any particular things. Don't have to take my creatine. I don't have to take my supplements anymore. Just all those little things. And you feel very lost. And I think, there's that aspect, and there's also knowing when you're going to retire. And, I think I was fortunate that I got to make that. I mean, I made that decision in the sense that like I knew Olympic trials, whether or not I made the team, was going to be my last competition. And I was fortunate in that sense because I wasn't dealing with injury. It wasn't, that choice wasn't taken away from me. But I think it is also difficult to know like when that is going to happen. And there were lots of friends of mine who were like, oh, just go on for another like year and maybe do like another world championships. But having to, and so like making that decision is difficult as well. So I think, my umbrella term, which I've kind of gone a roundabout way on, was supporting athletes through retirement from their sport, and like what that looks like, and supporting them through the mental health impact that can have on you. And I was
Yeah.
very lucky. I had a lot of like friends and family around me to help me through that. And like I said, I had something big to focus on afterwards, but it isn't easy. And we were discussing this earlier, like it takes a lot longer than I think you anticipate. Like I was like, oh, a few weeks and I'll kind of get used to having to work out by myself and, organize my own, training and if I want to and all that stuff. But it took a lot longer of the impact of, seeing the next big competition that you're not at, but all your friends are at, or seeing a picture uploaded of, your training group and you're not there anymore, or just things like that. And they can, it comes and goes in waves, and there are little triggers that you're suddenly like, that can be really difficult to overcome. But that was a very long-winded answer of saying that was the hill that I wanted to die on.
That's okay. We love a long-winded answer on a podcast. But yeah, we were chatting before we turned the camera on, if you like, or the microphone, and it's almost sort of like an open textbook exam, because I've got all of my notes
Yeah.
from when I left sport, and you had a lot of your notes as well. So when people are sort of faced with like stopping high performance sport or
Mm,
changing sport for a different reason, like this could come in so many different formats. It doesn't necessarily have to be like the elite of the elite, but typically high performance athletes are sort of 34% more likely to experience depression or anxiety. There's like aspects such as social isolation, financial concerns, identity crisis, and purpose. And I think the main sort of bits that I had written down, because this is actually a topic that I really did want to cover on an episode. My main sort of bits that I've written down is everyone does have this huge build up to events and competitions, or just almost just the stress of like waking up on time to get to a session on time. And there's always like this sort of pressure to get it right. And then suddenly you're just in a free fall. And it is a really interesting change. One of the bits I've written in my notes is you can rip it off like a plaster and do it really quickly, as in, this is the point where I'm going to retire, and you just do it. Or you could gradually like have an injury and you slowly seep out of the sport. But whichever way you do it, ripping a plaster off or slowly finishing, it still leaves this massive hole of, as I said, like social, financial, um, and like direction. And there's no way around it. Like this is, I guess this hill to die on is like the Himalayas. You like it's kind of you've got to go up and over in order to you got to reach the summit in order to sort of get over it. And a lot of the time when you're in sport, I like vividly remember a coach of mine sort of saying like these sporting years, like these are going to be the best years of your life. Like you're never going to find anything better than this. And it frequently makes me think back to when I first went to uni, a friend telling me, um, how do you know what your favorite kind of ice cream is if you've only tried one or two ice creams? And he was actually referring to like your dating life. But I I think it's actually very prominent when you're looking at your sporting life for whatever reason taking a turn and people are like, oh, that's the best time and there's so much pressure. And then you're trying to find a new part of life. Like, how do you know that's the best time? Because you're about to go into a different chapter and it is, it is going to be okay. And I completely agree with, there isn't that much support. One of the episodes that we did prior, we had Nicoline Laidlaw on, who was saying that Denmark actually offer 6 months of counselling when you leave elite sport. And that's like part of the process is they support you, they give you some sort of direction in terms of mental health. And that is my one sort of recommendation is like therapy or counseling. Like if you're doing something 6 days a week, then you are going to need some sort of support when you change direction.
No, we were quite lucky in that sense with British Swimming. They had like performance lifestyle support, which while we were swimming was basically, they helped you kind of find passions and interests outside of swimming, because quite a few people that join the National Centre, some of them go to university, some of them don't, but I think it becomes pretty much a full-time like professional job from like 18. And like I was lucky I didn't join until I was probably like I think I was 25. So by that point, like I'd had my university experience, and this was, I was trying to as a professional, so it was kind of my entire life. But I think like, going at 18 and having your entire life be your sport, like it's hard to find interests and passions, and it's hard to figure out what you might want to do beyond sport. And so again, like I say this as someone who was lucky that I knew what I wanted to go on to, but if I didn't, that would have been really isolating. That probably would have been way harder to leave, in the sense that like, it's that scary. Like, if you have no idea what you want to go on to afterwards, that's can be a really terrifying thought for some people. So having kind of the mental health support um, beyond retirement, also still like processing like what you did, because I think it's this crazy intense environment when you're in it, and it seems to all make sense when you're doing it, but sometimes like when you would step back and actually look what you were doing, you're like, wait, that was nuts. Like, we're traveling around the world, like doing all of this stuff, like racing, and even just that entire pressure cooker environment. When you leave it, sometimes you're like, what just happened? And so I think just unpacking sometimes like what that life was like, and what your life can look like now, and it's okay that it doesn't look like that anymore.
You're like talking to a friend and you're like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then somebody said this, and it's all like normal everyday to day stuff. And the friend who doesn't do the sport for whatever
Yeah,
reason is like jaw on the
yeah,
floor.
yeah. And I think even like, some of the conversations we have, like I was again very fortunate to be at the National Centre. We had such great coaches and such great support staff, but it was crazy in the sense that like I think I was one of, as a group of I think like 15 of us, I was one of maybe four that hadn't been to the Olympics, maybe four or five in that group. So it's this environment that like making the Olympics is like the norm, and I think then adjusting that back to normal life, where it's like, oh wait, no, it's okay that I didn't go. Like that is such an elite group of people, and that's okay that I didn't make it. Because I think for me personally, I always felt like I was a bit of a failure in this group, because like they were all winning Olympic medals, and like that was their goal. And I was like, I just want to get to the competition. And I was like, oh, that makes me feel really like childish. I'm like, oh, I just want to participate. Like, I just want to be there. And I think adjusting from that of like really wanting this goal for a really long time, and feeling like even if I did get it, I was like, that was kind of the norm. So I still kind of, even though like that was such a big goal of mine for so long. For some people, it was like, okay, well, when I get to the Olympics, what do I want to do? And then failing at that, then still being kind of having to process all of those emotions that came along with that, because I failed at this thing I'd worked like and thought about every day for years of my life, and like processing that sort of disappointment while not in that environment anymore was quite an interesting one, because then I'd speak to my friends, they'd be like, yeah, but like what you were doing was so cool and like all this stuff, and I'd be like, it's so funny because when I was in it I thought I was failing the whole time. So it's a really interesting one of the when you're out of that world and learning how to kind of not be like normal again, because obviously like it's not like I went crazy, but like learning what the new normal is for you, and adjusting back to that.
It's like working out what the new rhythm is
Mm,
of life. If I go back to my textbook of notes that I
yeah.
have to my left here, I'll paint the scene for you. It's chaotic. There's a lot of different colours and notes. And I one thing that somebody did say to me when I initially stopped sort of competing at a high level was, it takes a year and all 4 seasons for you to understand how something changed your life and how your life will look without it. And they weren't talking to me about sport at the time, but I really resonated with it about sport, if that makes sense. I think
Mm,
they were actually talking about like grief or like the loss of a loved one. And effectively, sometimes leaving sport can be, it can be grief, or it can be
mm,
associated with grief, or the almost the loss of a lifestyle. And then when
yeah.
I started thinking about it in terms of like going through all 4 seasons, September was kind of the start of the season. And once I'd been
Mm,
through a September, and then once I'd been through like the January where you had that post Christmas panic where you'd not done as much training as you were
yeah.
supposed to. And then once you'd gone through like a spring assessment, or you know, any of the May races that we used to do, and then, into the absolute pinnacle, which was that first week of July for the rowing season. Once you'd sort of gone through all of those pinpoint months, and you sort of learn how to pace yourself almost without the pressure of this sport,
Mm,
it suddenly did start to feel a little bit easier. The other thing that I've
mm,
written down here is there is a gap in your social life where your teammates were, and they were there every day, and they, but they still are there and they still exist. So my main bit here
yes.
is go and see them. Don't just hide away and pretend that they don't exist anymore, because they do, and they are there. We just have to get up and see them, rather than just, you know, getting changed next to them every
Yeah.
morning.
Yeah. No, I think that the seasons one is really interesting, and I think I definitely felt that with like just like watching big competitions happen, or you're suddenly like, oh wait, and you suddenly realize like how out of that mindset you are. Like I remember it was like, they were recapping like or talking about a world championships that was coming up. And I was suddenly like, oh gosh, like I forgot that this would be world championships time. And I was like, oh, that's crazy to me that like not long ago we would have been discussing this for months. Like it would have been, or the trials would have been what everyone would have been talking about and thinking about and preparing for. And like, I know the lead up to it and what that would have looked like and the taper and all of this stuff. And I was like, oh, wow, like I feel so removed from that now. And I'm like, gosh, I kind of forgot that that would have even been happening. And that I thought that was a tricky one for me in that sense. I was actually quite lucky. So this summer, so yeah, Paris 2024 was the summer that I was hoping to make the team, which obviously, yeah, a devastating thing not to achieve. But in the sense, I was really lucky in the sense that actually one of my really close friends, who I'm not sure you might have actually heard about her from like mutual friends of ours, but she went through a really traumatic incident of how she got her foot bitten off by a shark when she was on holiday in Turks and Caicos.
Yes, I
And
have been told.
I mean, just the most inspiring, incredible story. And I will like use any excuse to talk about her because she's just one of the most incredible people I know and will ever know. She swam with me at Yale, and through her recovery, she wanted to maintain her like love for the water. Of course, gets back into racing, qualifies for the Paralympic Games, and we'd always joked that like, how cool would it be if like we were both in Paris and we like got to go to the Olympics together. Um, and I obviously like failed at that goal, but she succeeded. And that was just so special for me because I then got to go to Paris and support her. And she won 2 silver medals and like had achieved like 2 American records. So like truly the most incredible story. But I think what the part that I wanted to put in that was like, it was special to be able, first of all, if I had made the Olympics, I may not have been able to go support her. Also just like being able to reframe that experience, and like that experience of me swimming in Paris was not meant to be, but like supporting her like was, and that was really special in itself. But yeah, I think it takes time to like to recognize that and realize that. I really relate to the 4 seasons thing, and it does feel like it's this like, it does feel like grief. It does feel like loss in the sense that it's like a part of like yourself. Like you're no longer like usually I would introduce myself and like swimming would be like the second or third thing that I talk about. And now I'm like, I meet people and like they don't know that part about me, and that's okay too.
It is a really interesting one. And I have been told about your friend, and I've been told that I need to go and get in contact with her because she would make a brilliant
She
guest on the
she's
podcast.
Yeah, she would be. She's so inspirational. She's incredible.
She's in the firing line on my list next of people. Oh my God, what was I going to say? Brain fart. What do you think the best advice you can give somebody who's basically staring down the barrel of a gun and they've decided elite sport at whatever level is not going to be what they carry on doing? They're going to sort of go in a different direction. What do you think the best advice you can give is, and where do you think you'll sort of direct them first, basically?
Oh, so there's someone that doesn't want to continue doing elite sport.
So they might have done it for X amount of years, and like they've decided they want to move on and do something else,
Hmm.
or maybe they've had an injury or a health diagnosis, or maybe they just want to switch it up and they've gone from like junior sport and now they're at university. Maybe they want to try something else, but they are aware that there will be this thing when you change
Yeah,
sports or you leave a sport to do something else.
yeah. Oh, it's a good question, and I think the best piece of advice that I was very lucky to have so many great like mentors and advice along the way. But one of them was always like, know your reason why. And if I think for me, like going through the process of, and I think we talked about this earlier, but like I almost retired like just after COVID. I wasn't really able to train that much. We had Olympic trials, and I performed fine. Like I swam well, but I unfortunately didn't make the team for Tokyo 2021, and I was very close to walking away. I think I really had to dig deep and think about like the reason why I loved swimming and wanted to keep doing it. And I think a big reminder of that, and this was another piece of advice, but it's like, what would that like 6-year-old you that, or like 8-year-old you that like dreamt of what you could accomplish, like they would be so proud, first of all, looking at like what you have done, but also like do it for them, and like what would they want. And so yeah, I think a lot of the time I really had to think of like my reasons why. And even like leaving this sport, I knew that like I'd done as much as I could in it. And it does, and it's still like, I think it's still relatively fresh. It was like just over a year ago, but I think, yeah, knowing your reason why for each decision, and knowing your reason why for why you're doing specific things. And I think it was good. I literally every year of my career really evaluated that. And again, I think having that thing to move on to, I think I always come back to this is because I was lucky to have something to go on to, but it also made it difficult because it made leaving the sport actually quite easy. Because I actually got into medical school like 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago now. So I could have left at any of those points. And I think I really had to like dig deep and be like, no, like this, I want to see actually what I am capable of and what my potential is in this sport. Because like a sport is a difficult one to come back to. You can, but I think with swimming, it's really difficult. So yeah, knowing your reason why. And then I think, I mean, as some advice for someone who's like transitioning out of sport or to something else, have a good support network around you. Talk to people that you're going through, like make notes on your phone, write down things. And I think, see what your true feelings are about what you're going through. And I think it's sometimes interesting to also look back and reflect on how your perspective of something might have changed. So like I started doing this with like, I wrote down, my feelings straight after trials. And then I, periodically kept doing it. And it was so interesting to see like how at the beginning I was like so bitter. I was like, screw this. Like, I worked so damn hard for that. Like I deserved that. Like all this stuff. And then it became this like, it's like processing that grief. And suddenly I was like, it's okay that it didn't happen. Like I was able to do X, Y, Z. Like that wasn't my journey in the sport and that's okay. And I'm grateful for the journey that I did have. And then it became so much more positive. Like, no, but look what I did do. So yeah, so I think that mental health support and yeah, journaling and all those sorts of things are always super important. And then I think like, I mean, just general advice is, but just like do what makes you happy.
I was just gonna add on to your section about advice when
Yeah.
you're at a crossroads, shall we say.
Mm-hmm.
And my bit of advice is recover. You would recover from a
Mm-hmm.
race or a training session. This is exactly the same. It needs the same time as you were sort of saying about making notes and sort of a little bit of reflection. Like it needs the same
Mm,
time, it needs the same analysis. It isn't gonna just, you're not gonna snap your fingers and just everything's gonna be fine. It does need a bit of time and a little bit of thought into how it's gonna happen and how your new life is gonna look and how you're gonna sort of frame it basically.
yeah.
We do have a question which is your favorite moment so far in this journey, in this life that you are living and are
Gosh.
on.
Oh, that's tough because I think I have so many. And it took me a while to get to that point because I think again when I like retired from swimming, I was like, gosh, like I didn't accomplish anything that I wanted to. And it's taken me a while to like be able to reframe those things as proper successes. But I think I have so many special moments with like at Yale swimming because I think swimming is such an individual sport. You're swimming like you're in your head, you're in the water, you can't really hear much while you're even training. And then when you're racing, you're by yourself again, you can't hear anything. You can hear like sort of crowds, but like not always. And so when I got to Yale, it was like the first time I felt like fully part of a team. And I had a great club team growing up, but I was like, we were all working towards like winning the Ivy League championships. And I think that was such a special experience. And my sophomore year, so my second year, we ended up winning Ivy League championships, and we hadn't done that in like 20 years. And that was like such a special moment, like to celebrate that with the team. And like we had an incredible senior class that really like was such great leaders, and they really like led us to that victory. But that was such a special moment. I think I swam okay. And this is the funny thing is that you look back and you're like, I agonized over like those tenths of a second, and like ultimately like I don't even know what time I went. And like it doesn't really matter. But that was really special. And then also my senior year, I I like was going best times in like every event, like left, right, and center. And it was one of those things where I was like, I don't know what's happening, but like don't overthink it. Like because I was, really pleased with like all of my results. And for the first time in a long time, I was like, yes, like this is what I've worked for. And that was really satisfying. And so my senior year Ivy League championships was also really special in that sense. We didn't end up winning, which was gutting, but it was a really special team. And it was cool to be like, one more of the leadership side of the team that time around. So I say that's definitely a highlight. I think that, being at the Commonwealth Games was so special. It's funny because like at the time I was really disappointed with how I swam, which is funny to look back on. But I also like had COVID towards the end of the meet. It was also like it was not the perfect meet in any sense, but I think it was just so cool being like a multi-sport event. So it was my first and last experience of that. And being able like representing England at a home games was truly like an experience. I still get like goosebumps like talking about because swimming we don't get a lot of recognition. Like no one, apart from Olympics, like no one really cares or knows about swimming. Like world championships, Europeans will go by and like unless you're in the swimming world, you won't know. I think it's picking up and it's getting better, but I think there's still a long way to go in terms of like TV coverage and things like that. But that was like just the most special thing. I remember the first relay we were like swimming, we were doing the Heath swim. So it's like a morning swim, which like no one really cares about those normally. And I remember we were like walking out. They weren't, and it's a heat swim, so they weren't like announcing like, oh, in lane 5, like it's this country, like none of that. And we literally like just walked out like onto like behind the blocks. And like I genuinely, it was like vibrating. It was insane. Like everything was so loud and like it was so cool. And I think that experience was just so special. Like I felt so famous, which I'm obviously not, but like I remember like after one of my events, it was after like a semi-final and we were in the second semi-final, so I like just got out the pool, and I think I came like third or fourth in the semi-final. So it was like touch and go whether I was going to make the final. So I like climb out the pool, and I hadn't looked at the previous swim because I didn't, obviously, you don't want it to get in your head. So I was like, I have no idea what they went in the previous semi. Like anyway, so I'm like walking behind the blocks, like again, and then they like announce it on the board and they go through, and then luckily I like snuck in. I was like in lane 8. And I just like looked up to the crowd because I was like curious, like if my parents were there, or like I wanted to like wave and excite. And I just looked up, and these random, obviously not random, but like these England fans were like screaming at me, and they were so excited. And I was just like, it was just the moments like that where you realize like just like the power of sport, and like how it really does just like get people so excited and unite people. And that was just like such a special moment, which is again so funny because at the time, like obviously I was happy to have made the final, but like at the time I was like, oh, I didn't want to go that time. I want to go faster, like all this stuff. And you're like, I wish I'd really just like taken all of that in and really like lived in those moments, because I think I was just so focused. And I think this is what makes us athletes, is that you're always like chasing the extra tenth of a second, that barrier, like whatever it might be, making that team. You're always chasing the next thing. And I think that's what keeps you in it, that keeps you hungry to want more. But I wish I'd taken those moments to be like, wow, like this is so special. I get to, wear an England flag on my cap. I get to represent my country. I get random people cheering my name, and that's so cool. And I wish I really had like taken that in rather than just being like, I wanted to go faster. Like,
It's so funny because you're almost conditioned as well when you're competing at high level sport to block all of those things out.
yeah.
And so it's not even that, like, for you to be like, oh, I wish I could have taken that in. I bet there would have been like some form of team briefing where it's like, this might happen and this is how we need to make sure we react to it. And like, this is how you can prepare to make sure that you don't like drop your shopping in terms of performance wise.
Yeah.
So that's so funny listening to you sort of say that about, oh, I wish I would have absorbed it more. It's like, but you had your racing blinkers on. That's
Yeah.
kind of how that works. And the other thing that I was gonna mention is I've recently just sort of spoken to someone doing an episode, Hetty, who I guess will be the week before your episode, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And she does a lot of research into events and why people like competing in events. And a lot of the time it boils down to connection and people meeting like-minded people. And as you're saying, the power of sport to like bring a group of people together, it is about that sort of shared connection, shared experience. Or we were there when so and so did this
Yeah.
in the pool, or I was there with my mates doing the relay in this pool or this race or whatever it
Yeah.
was. And it is really special. And a lot of the time when I ask people what their favorite moment was, it is a moment that involved multiple others. It's not just,
Yeah.
oh, I won this. Or maybe everyone's just being humble and actually they're like keeping it to themselves. And they're like, no, it was this amazing moment where I won the gold or
Yeah.
I set a world record or whatever. But 9 times out of 10, it's an athlete talking about a connection that they made with a group of people or an experience that they had as a group. That
Yeah.
brings us on to best fuck up.
Okay, I don't know if I have a great answer to this one. I was gonna do like not making the team, but that's just a bit deep and quite sad, to be honest.
Oh,
I think we can do like a best. Okay, I guess my best fuck up, which again, not really super my fault, but so my original plan when I graduated is I was like, oh, I'm gonna do a year of swimming. I'm gonna put everything into it, and then go to Tokyo, go to the Olympics, cool, then start medical school. None of that went to plan at all. Obviously, COVID came around, and yeah, so I like moved to Tennessee after I graduated to train with a really good program. Then I had to literally fly back home, and my training, I guess it's not really a fuck up, but I dealt with this situation by I had like a 4 meter long, 2 meter wide like paddling pool in my back garden.
I've seen pictures of this.
And I literally tied myself with like a bungee cord to the like fence behind me, and I would like swim against that for I mean, not for long because it was so cold. Obviously, it wasn't heated, but that was, yeah, not a great time. But I guess like making the best of a situation. So we'll kind of put that one in there. But I think it really shows like it's so funny. It's like, you know, when you get sick and you're like, oh, it should have been more grateful when I could like breathe through my nose. And it's so, but like you have that. And then when I was like, I was like, oh, literally 4 weeks ago, I was like, oh gosh, like I don't want to go to training. Like I'm tired. And then 4 weeks later, I'm like, COVID happens. I can't train for like almost a year. And I'm like,
Um,
wow, I really should have been more grateful for those times where I had a pool with heating and there was like a black line for me to follow. Like it's all those little things that I think like you really take for granted sometimes. And like I'm sure you have with like injuries as well. Like you're like, oh gosh, like such a pain that I have to go training. And then the following week, you're suddenly like, wait, I can't train. I really wish I could. And I really miss that. And there's all those things. So I think COVID was obviously difficult for everyone in so many aspects. But I think it was good personally for me in the sense that it really made me grateful for my sport and like, you know, it showed me what life could look like without it. And I think, you know, in terms of retiring, God, I'm really like roundabout answer here, but like in terms of retiring, it like gave me a sense of what retired life like could look like
mm,
as well. And I think, well, I mean, obviously it wasn't normal life, but like it gave me, you know, a sense of life without swimming. Because like up until COVID, I think I probably had not swum continuously for like maybe a maximum like 2 weeks, if that, from like the age of about 11. And so I suddenly like couldn't swim for like a month. And I was like, and I think, you know, you adjust and it was useful then when I did end up retiring to know like it's okay, like life will go on and you'll figure out how to work out in different ways. But yeah, I guess that was my best fuck up was like putting everything into swimming and then then COVID really screwed that plan up for me.
I think that was so funny when you're like, oh yeah, it really makes you grateful, you know, when you're ill and then your nose gets blocked and you're like, oh, I just wish I'd taken breathing out of both nostrils more
Like take
seriously.
it for granted. No, don't take it for like be grateful for it now. I often do that and then I'm like, oh, how lucky am I?
Yeah. How lucky am I to be able to breathe through both nostrils?
Yeah, no, literally.
Oh,
Yeah.
that is, yeah, that is very relatable. What is one thing you would like to change sort of in your sport or one change that you would like to see in the sport?
I think, yeah, it's such a good question. I think a few that I've already sort of mentioned, one being like attention for swimming on the TV, on the media, all of that stuff, I think will really help it become a sport that's not just every 4 years at the Olympics. Because I think it's like one of the most watched sports at the Olympics, but like
Mm,
no one knows about anything other than that. And I think that leads on to my other thing is that swimmers will be able to get paid more. It's crazy in the sense that these are the people that you're wanting to be like the most elite in their sports, that you want like representing the country, like being medal hopes, like all of that stuff, and they're barely being funded. And I think it stems down to the fact that like there's just not enough money in swimming, and you know that money then comes from people, you know, paying attention to it and wanting to watch it and all that stuff. So I think that's definitely something that I wish would change.
mm,
I also think like the fact that there is so little money in it, a lot of people won't continue swimming because like, you know, a lot of people can't afford to. And I was very lucky that I had the support of like my parents and, you know, otherwise I really wouldn't have been able to keep going. And again, lucky that I was able to do 2 seasons of this thing called the International Swimming League. And it actually paid, I mean, there were issues with it in itself, but we were able to get some money for swimming, and that was, I think, a really good step in the right direction. So that's definitely one which I've already sort of mentioned. But I think the other one would be that I think should change in the sport is a lot more support for like mental health and like especially when it comes to things like nutrition and like you know all of that help, because I think when you're younger it's difficult to know like how to feel your body correctly because you're not doing what's normal. Like swimming 4 hours a day is not what a normal like teenager should, well not say should be doing, but like, you know, is doing. And so I think learning how to feel your body correctly is so important.
mm,
um and, you know, I think, you know, being a swimmer, you're like half naked most of the time. And so your body is scrutinized in so many aspects of like, oh, your elbow should be this way or that way or whatever. And I think there needs to be more like knowledge and awareness and support for like men and women. I think women, it's easier for them to be scrutinized regardless in terms of their like body shape. But I think support for like young women through swimming in terms of nutrition, I think is so super important. It can be really damaging. So I think that's definitely something that I think needs to change.
I always am a big advocate for sort of like nutritional education
Mm,
for youngsters who are sort of like, well, we're not on a full training program. And it's like, well, you kind of are, because you're growing, you're
yeah,
training, and you've got school. So you're basically doing like a 9 till 5, if you like, or a 9 till 3 in terms of education. Your body
yeah,
is trying to be taller or make all of these like changes that the training is encouraging. And then you're not that training encourages you to be taller, but like you would be growing at those young ages. You wouldn't have
mm,
finished growing at that point. And then you're doing training as well, which is
mm,
encouraging like muscle growth or
yeah.
whatever you want to include. So I completely agree on that one. Do you have one piece of advice or a quote that you sort of like return to, like a Bella mantra, if you like?
That's a good. I think the piece of advice, I think it was my long-winded answer to the previous question might have answered that. I do think knowing your reason why, I think regardless of what you're doing, is always super important. But one mantra I really like, and I think this has helped me throughout my career, especially on like different teams that I was on, but like it was, we rise by lifting others.
Oh,
And I really liked that because I think, you know, when you're in a hard set, and like you've probably, you know, had this so many times, especially like being in a boat with other people, like that's so relatable. But with swimming, again, it's individual. Like you're by yourself a lot of the time. And I think when you're in the trenches, when you're really struggling, helping someone else or like having someone else help you can make the biggest difference. And that was something that I always try to remind myself when I was like in those tough moments. It's like, okay, someone else might be in a tougher spot than I am. So like always just trying to like support those around me, whether it's just like, hey, you got this, or like, let's go like last round, whatever it is. I used to think that was always like that. Yeah, that always really helped me. And I think it's very similar onto the like high tides, like raise all boats or something, which I also really liked. But yeah, I think just any way to make swimming more of like a team sport. Like I was always hopping on that train because I always like, I loved a good relay. I loved being on a relay. I loved swimming for other people. So for me, that was always really special.
that phrase, isn't there? That's like, there's no I in team,
Mm,
but there is a U in another 4-letter word that I definitely won't put on this podcast. But there's all sorts of ways that you can frame it. Basically,
yeah.
people do really like being a part of a team, and
Mm,
it does give you that sort of sense of belonging, and the
mm,
like-minded people that want to get up at 4:15 in the morning to go swimming or to go and do another sport, whatever it might be.
yeah.
My final question for you, and maybe this will be easy, maybe this won't be, but what is your soundtrack for this week? What song are you listening to?
This is not a great answer, but I'm a Taylor Swift fan. So this week is a big week for me in the sense
Oh,
that
yeah.
she has her new album coming out on Friday. That will definitely end up being the soundtrack to my week. But yeah, so I've actually started back at medical school this whole week. So in terms of soundtrack, I don't know if like a specific song comes to mind, but a lot about like kind of sort of like getting back to it, back in the routine, back in the grind. But yeah,
Have you
that's a
got like
really bad answer.
old workout songs like pumping you up on the way to school or something?
God, I like went through a phase where I like thought I was really into like rap and Eminem and things. So I like listened to that when I like went up to race, which like is funny because it's like not very me. I don't know if I'd listen to that like on my way to university, but I kind of love that idea that I work. But no, I definitely think my answer to that would have to be Taylor Swift's new album because it's meant to be like a lot of bangers. The album name is The Life of a Showgirl.
Yes.
So
I've
not that that
seen
is
this.
me, but I will try and relate to that in any way possible.
You'll have to
Um,
text me when it comes out.
oh my God, that would be so exciting.
You'll have to send me like a review. You'll be like, this.
Oh my gosh, yes, I can give you like all my thoughts on the album. I
Well,
know.
that is all I have written down. So you have completed the podcast. Well done.
Maybe that was so. I feel like we were just like having a chat.